Yo, what's going on guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's Bertrude and today we're using a build I like to call Death's Deliverance, the Harbinger of Death. Let's take a look. So it's a level 200 build. We've got 60 Vigour, 30 Strength, 50 Dex, 42 Intelligence and 40 Faith. A bit of a mixed bag. We're using the Opaline Hard tier for the damage negation, and then we're using the Dex Knot to boost our damage for a little bit more on our weapons. And here's a quick look at the armour and talismans we're using on the build. The first main weapon on the build is the Death's Poker. As well as this, we've also got the option to use the Banished Knight's Halberd, and that's got the Black Flame Tornado on it. Then in our second weapon slot, we've got a simple dagger, and that's equipped with Endure. Then we've also got the option to use a staff and a seal on this one because we're mixing our spells and our incantations up depending on the situation. And speaking of our spells and incantations, we've got the Black Flame, the Scouring Black Flame, the Explosive Ghost Flame, Tibia Summons, and then finally our buff for a bit more protection, the Black's Flame Protection. And that's the build guys. I've got another interesting story to go with this build. We'll get into it once the video starts, but for now it's time for you lot to sit back, relax and enjoy. How long have I wandered in the dark? Forever moving forward, forever going nowhere. I walk through an eternity of sorrow and emptiness. I am lost. However, I sense I am not alone. I feel the space around me grow thicker from time to time. I feel the same dull, sad energy come and go, but I do not see. All I see is dark. Do they see? Or do they see the same bleak vastness as I? Are they too lost in this endless void? Do they feel my presence as I feel theirs? I am not alone, but I do not see. I search inside my own mind. I try to find something, any flicker of light, anything of substance. Any minuscule scrap of energy I can latch onto. The mere hint of a memory, a name, a face in the dark. Anything. But nothing comes, and still I walk. The Harbinger of Death, a fitting name for such as he, who walks with one foot in this world and one foot in the other. They say he feeds off the lost wandering souls who reside in the dark place they cannot depart from. We all know of the place, but we do not speak of it. We only pray that we do not ever have the misfortune to end up there ourselves. The Harbinger of Death. If you're ever unlucky enough to cross him, death is what you'll find. He fights with a dark power, an unnatural power. He conjures dark flames and searing explosions. He summons the souls of those he's slain to fight for him on the battlefield. He reaches down into the dark and uses the sadness of those who are lost and wandering. He uses the sadness as a fuel to compose his own orchestra of death and destruction. Sorrow, it seems, is extremely flammable. His features are deformed and twisted, corrupted by the years and years of abusing these dark methods. He covers his face with the mask of an unsuspecting old man, maybe to draw his foes into a fake sense of confidence. We will never know. Who can claim to truly know the mind of one who has opened himself up to such unspeakable methods of combat? However, don't be fooled. Whether he wears a mask or not, we all know the monster that lies underneath. How long have I wandered in the dark? Forever moving forward, forever going nowhere. I have no meaning, no purpose. My existence has become the movement of placing one of my decomposing feet in front of the other. The soles of my feet burn with each yard I make. Where once there was flesh, now is only bone. I raise a hand to my face to feel the sharp contours of an eye socket, a cheekbone, exposed teeth. What has become of me? I have no purpose. I wonder. Time has no meaning in this place. I walk and I walk, and then, out of nowhere, I saw, for the first time in a very, very, very long time, I saw an outstretched hand in the dark. I move forward. How can this be? All I have known for so long has been the dark. How can this be? I reached out for the hand in the dark, and as I take it in my own, I see the remains of what I knew should have been my own hand, flesh and blood, now only bone and cartilage. But I could feel the warmth. I could see the colour and sense the blood flowing through the hand in the dark that I held so tightly. I never wanted to let go. I took a step closer and I looked up, and I saw a face. A sombre, welcoming face of an old man. He wore a red bandage across his eyes, and then I heard a voice. It did not come from the face, it was inside my head, and yet I knew it was spoken by the old man who stood before me. Fight for me. I need your help. Fight for me. I felt a sudden weight in my other hand. It was a cold, smooth weight. I looked down and I knew the item I held. It was all I had ever known, all I ever needed to know. It was a long, curved blade, stained with the blood of my fallen enemies from battles long forgotten. I felt something stir within me. It had been so long that I had felt anything, but now, with the plea of this old man, I had a purpose. I had a meaning. I lifted my eyes up off my sword, back into the eyes of the old man. I spoke, and yet the remains of my lips didn't move. Yes, old man, I will fight for you. Okay guys, nice little short story there based on the character that I'm using for this video, the Harbinger of Death, Death's Deliverance. And now let me explain that story. It was a little bit more obscure than the straight up lore kind of stories that I usually give. It all kind of started, this build, when I put it together. I looked at the description of Tibia's summons, and on the description it says, "The dead have long been left to wonder. What they need is leadership." And that little quote alone from the description of Tibia Summons just got my idea juices flowing like you wouldn't believe. I just had this image in my mind of fallen soldiers slain on the battlefield, just wandering, wandering that endless dark void where they can't pass on, but yet they're stuck, they're just wandering in the dark. They don't have a purpose, they lack meaning. Fallen soldiers, what do they do in the afterlife? They've no meaning. All they knew was combat and death and fighting and killing. That's what they were. That's what the whole meaning was. And in death, what are they left with? They're not left with much. They're just wandering, lost souls. And that's where this character comes in, the Harbinger of Death. He is some dark, almost like a dark mage. He's quite melee orientated, although he does have incantations and summons that he uses. He does have some powerful melee tools in his arsenal, but he has found the means to step into the world of the dead and use those fallen soldiers who are wandering to fight for him on the battlefield. He manipulates them, he approaches them wearing the face of an old man. He wears this mask. He's got the face of an old man to draw them into a false sense of security and trust. He makes those who wander in the dark feel like they're needed again. He gives those fallen soldiers a purpose. and then once they accept his offer and they open themselves up to be a tool in his ward, you know what I mean? They open themselves up to be used by him. Once they agree, they're his, and then he uses the energy of those wandering souls to conjure these dark spells that he uses. Sometimes it's in the form of these dark, powerful explosions. Sometimes they're actually reincarnated for a brief moment in the form of Tibia summons, and we actually get to see a glimpse of them on the battlefield. I just think it's a really cool idea. And it was actually Tibia summons that kind of fueled the whole theme of this build. When you see the skeletons of the Tibia summons, ghost-like figures come out and do that little attack for that brief moment, I just got thinking, what's their story? Where have these soldiers come from? How were they conjured into that brief moment to attack for whoever's casting that spell? And it's that kind of drove the whole story forward. And when I put the story together, I thought it was quite a nice little idea to show the perspective of one of those soldiers in the underworld, just wandering, lost, miserable, no purpose. And then we actually get to see the Harbinger of Death appear in the underworld, and we get a glimpse into how he would manipulate one of these fallen soldiers to fight for him. He appears in the form of a weak, unsuspecting old man, and he offers them something that they've not had in a long time, which is a purpose. He needs their help, he wants them to fight for him, and then as soon as they open themselves up to be used in whatever dark method this character desires from them, that's when they're in trouble, and that's when there's no escape, and they're basically just about to become fuel used by the Harbinger of Death to conjure some of his dark magic. And the most interesting part about this build is that the irony of it all is that he's reaching down into the underworld to use these fallen soldiers as fuel, to conjure these dark spells. But the irony is that he's probably the one who put them there in the first place. He's probably the one who killed these soldiers up on top, up in the world of the living. He killed these soldiers on the battlefield, and then he reaches down into the dark to use their energy to fuel more fights in the future, to send more soldiers down there, which he can then feed on in the future again. And it's just an endless loop. And it's that aspect of this build that I found most interesting. And I think that's where the Tibia summon spell again really comes into its own. He's killing these soldiers and then conjuring up to fight for him. I just think it's a really interesting idea. The Harbinger of Death, Death's Deliverance. Yeah, really cool build. Really cool character. This was actually a level 90 character before this video, but I made a couple of tweaks to it. I increased the level up to 200. I just felt it was another one of those builds that kind of weren't performing as well at a lower level at this point in the game's lifespan, so I made a few tweaks, increased it up to level 200, and it started performing a lot better, and I started having a lot more success with it. Bit more health, bit more power all round, bit of a wild stat spread on this one, so it's hard to get that pure damage output because there's so many different stats going on to accommodate all of our spells and different requirements. But overall at level 200 it's a decent build. And one last little bit I'd like to finish on for this video is that obviously when I'm doing the lore for these characters, I obviously know that it's not lore accurate to the game. I like to kind of think up my own lore and my own stories, but then I like to mix some of the lore from the game into it. I'm not too good when it comes to kind of remembering and knowing all of the lore within the game. There's so much, I've watched so many videos on it, but I kind of struggle to withhold all that information. Do you know what I mean by that? I kind of just can't, I've heard it, but then there's so much going on, I kind of forget all the little intricate parts of the lore. So when it comes to that side of things, I would struggle to make completely lore accurate builds, so I like just making my own stories up and mixing bits and bobs in from the game when and where I can. And this is the last invasion of the video, guys. I thought this was a great one to finish on. This just shows that even someone as dark as the Harbinger of Death can still be won over by a wholesome host. Take it easy, guys. Hope you all enjoyed the video. Look after yourselves, look after each other, and I'll see you all on the next one.